Hi, and welcome to The Outside Story, a podcast that is dedicated to reviewing film and TV shows from an outside perspective. My name is Larry, one of the co-hosts, and today I'm joining with Jonathan, my other co-host, and today is episode 2 of our October Halloween special. And we're talking about something very dear to us. What are we talking about, Jonathan?
We're talking about anything that has to do with Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, so we're covering the other films that we didn't cover last time when we talked about Mike Flanagan, which are, we're talking about Oculus, Gerald's Game, Doctor Sleep, and The Haunting of Bly Manor. And I have to say, I'm super excited to talk about Bly Manor, but we're gonna save that for last. I was looking forward to recording today's episode for Bly Manor. Like, that's how excited I was to talk about Bly Manor, just because
Are you suggesting that before this you're not really excited to record podcast episodes?
Well, not as today's episode is particularly special because this is something I'm particularly looking forward to, because like when you watch like certain films or movies or whatever, like you know, you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
There are some that you really want to talk about, you know, but there are some that it's like yeah, I'll talk about it. But like Tenet is one of them. I'd love to talk about that film with someone else, but not that many people have watched it.
Right.
And Bly Manor is something I definitely want to talk about. So, like I said, looking forward to this episode already. But why don't we go ahead and just get started with Oculus? So, Jonathan, are you like kind of familiar with Mike Flanagan's older films, like his previous works?
I actually haven't seen Ouija, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think. I saw the bad Ouija film. I didn't see.
Yeah, and then Flanagan made a sequel to that one, or a prequel, one of those.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know, we'll just kind of give a brief rundown. Mike Flanagan is a showrunner, director. He made creator, writer, editor. He does a lot of things. He does a lot of things on his own.
He does what we want to do, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. And in 2018, he did Haunting of Hill House, which I think, like, he's already been kind of doing a pretty good track record, but I think Haunting of Hill House really put him out there on the radar for everyone. For like, wow, like this guy is good. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of threw everything at him. But so the first film we're talking about is Oculus. Now, Oculus is about a family who purchases like this really old artifact mirror, kind of like something you would buy like at an auction, basically.
Antique.
But then antique. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. Antique. Artifact. Artifact is more fantasy.
Artifact is like a museum.
or like Indiana Jones. This is an antique.
Yeah.
Antique from an auction. This antique is cursed. So claims the daughter of the family. This is a family of 4. And so the daughter is trying to find ways to prove that this mirror is definitely cursed and is taking people's souls, basically. And this whole film is pretty brilliant. It's actually based on a short film that Mike Flanagan did back in 2005. All he had was a mirror and one actor and a camera. Like, that's all he legitimately had. And studios were really interested in turning this into a feature film, but they wanted it to be like done by found footage. But Flanagan was like, nah, I'm not. I'm not doing found footage. Which I think it'd be interesting as found footage, but I think the way he envisioned it was never as like found footage, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jonathan, what'd you think of this film?
I thought it was really interesting. One of the key characteristics, I guess, of this film is the idea of 2 timelines kind of happening at the same time. You get an older timeline that's kind of told through flashbacks, I guess, you know, and then you have the present timeline, right? And interestingly enough, this idea kind of carries on to Hill House, and like is kind of like one of the main storytelling like elements, I guess, that's used. I really liked that idea of like two timelines and 2 stories going on kind of at the same time. I mean, they're not technically happening at the same time. The older storyline had already happened, but then it's being told, right? It's being told to
Right.
the audience.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and we're discovering things about the first timeline as we're discovering things about the second timeline. Overall, I felt that the story was really sad, you know? It's a very, very depressing ending, but then I feel like that's kind of how horror is in general, you know? But this one in particular, I think was very depressing for me because of the
Yeah.
the state, you know, of the characters.
Right.
Very, very strong two main characters in my opinion. But then also, like, as I'm watching this and I'm watching more Flanagan stuff, like the characters definitely follow like the tropes that he kind of has in his film.
Right.
The brother being the one who doesn't really believe in ghosts, you know, and then the daughter, the older sister, being the one who is very, very set, like, and kind of like, quote, knows the truth, right, of what happens.
Right.
And both kind of coming to terms with things that happen to them as children. You know, there's this trauma that happened to them. That's kind of the good thing about Flanagan, is he takes these kind of like traumatic events that happened in people's lives and like explores them, you know. And so Oculus definitely does that, and I liked it, you know. I liked it.
Right.
I would say that you could definitely tell it's a precursor to everything that Flanagan is doing, you know.
Right. And it's so interesting how he kind of like, even though it's like a similar basis, he manages to like unravel it in very complex ways, you know, throughout his later works.
Right.
Which is very interesting because like most of the time, like me personally, like, I would run out of ideas. But yeah, do you have anything else to say for Oculus?
I would just want to say that I don't know if I really liked Karen Gillian's performance in this. I feel like she was just fine until the very end, and then the actor who played the son, Brenton Thwaites, I think is his name.
Yeah.
I thought he did amazing, and he's like an actor who I think after doing this, like, he got really, really big. And so yeah, it's really interesting to see him in this role, because I've seen him in other roles before, and I think he's just a phenomenal actor. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I thought both actors and actresses were great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also did like the idea of like the simultaneous timelines. Like this film makes you like doubt a lot of things.
Yeah,
Because
it's
the
trippy.
way the mirror works is that it makes you think it's something is going on, but it's really not. But it actually did go on, you know. And like, okay, so one of the big things that that was like so easy to predict was when the daughter, she was replacing the light bulbs, right? But she was eating an apple, and she placed it next. She was placing the dead light bulbs next to the apple, and I was like, oh, bro, like something's gonna happen. She'll eat that light bulb on accident.
Yeah.
And then she does accidentally, but then she didn't. So like it's real trippy. It is real trippy. It gets you starting to doubt, like, did the end actually even happen, or did it even happen at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those films. So be on the lookout for that if you're interested. All right, if we have nothing else to talk about, I guess we can move forward.
Yeah, let's keep moving. Yeah, so Gerald's Game is this film based on a Stephen King novel. I haven't read the novel, so I don't know how close it is to the actual book, but it's about this couple who they're struggling through their marriage, and so in order to, I guess, improve their marriage, they decide to go out on a little retreat. And when they go out for this retreat, the husband, Gerald, gets this idea in his head that, you know, they're gonna put something interesting in their sex life. And so he brings handcuffs. As they're kind of getting ready to have sex, he handcuffs his wife to the bed, and they kind of start to do this little role play thing. And when that happens, he actually has a heart attack and he dies, leaving his wife to be handcuffed to the bed and to literally be stuck. And so the whole movie is based on the wife's. I don't remember what her name is. Do you remember?
Mm-mm. We'll just use their roles.
Yeah. The wife. It's easy to remember Gerald because his name's in the title.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the wife, she essentially spends the whole time of the whole duration of the movie getting out of that situation that she's in. In the meantime, she has to overcome something within herself in order to overcome her external situation. And I think it's great. What did you think, Larry?
Oh, I liked this film a lot.
Yeah.
The Stephen King novel, it was known to be impossible to adapt
Oh, really?
because yeah, like the novel is way more complex because so in the novel she creates characters in her head and she gives them all nicknames, and like with those I guess personalities of hers that she creates, she's able to kind of find ways to overcome it.
Yeah.
And so Gerald's Game, the film, Mike Flanagan's I guess approach to it was a lot more. It was interesting because Mike Flanagan uses like the wife's like her perceptions of her husband and herself, and they're kind of all talking to her at the same time, which is also something like a precursor again as to what we'll see later on. And so like with this approach, like Stephen King was really impressed with it, and like he liked it a lot. I liked it more than I thought I would too. Because like man, all you have is like you're telling me all you have is someone stuck in a room the entire time.
I mean, you think that about Hush too, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Hush is another film that Mike Flanagan did about this deaf woman who is essentially stuck inside her cabin while somebody's trying to break into her house. And that's the entire film. Same thing with Gerald's Game, right? You know, she's stuck inside this room. And that's basically like 95% of the entire film.
Right. And like, so like, how do you make something like that so interesting? And he just nails it really, really well.
Oh, yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually had trouble sleeping after Gerald's Game because there's a particular there's a particular character in the movie that kind of shows up while she's sleeping, and that just scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, that part was real creepy. I agree.
I was like, "Are you kidding me right now? What is happening?" And she wakes up, and that character just kind of shows up doing really, really awkward and disgusting and kind of weird things. Great movie about, again, like this internal conquering of yourself and discovery of yourself and overcoming external situations because of it.
Yeah. And sometimes I think in order for us to overcome those sort of inner conflicts, we have to be experiencing something so distressing, you know, externally.
Yeah.
Which I think this film does a really good job at showing that. So
yeah. One final thing, there's a point in the film where she realizes that she's gonna die if she doesn't have water. She remembers that her husband had put a glass of water on top of her on a floating shelf above of the headrest of the the what's it called, of the bed.
No, it was legit just a shelf. I think.
It's a floating shelf on top of the bed, and she gets it, and then she remembers that she has a price tag that she took off her dress that she put up there, and she rolls the price tag into a straw to suck out the water because, again, her hands are handcuffed, so she can't move them too far. And I was like, does that really work? So I actually tried it. I like rolled up a piece of paper and tried to like suck out water, and I was like, it works, but it is real like not effective. Like, you know, you barely get any. But
is it a piece of paper? No, I thought that looks like that price tag was made out of cardboard.
Yeah, it was made out of something a little bit more stronger than paper.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely used like a harder paper. I don't remember what it was, but
okay.
Yeah. It was like cardstock or something. Anyway.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And then also like phenomenal acting all around in this.
Next is Dr. Sleep, which came out last year. And it is a sequel,
quote unquote sequel,
sequel to The Shining, and this is more of like a supernatural horror. Oh man, Doctor Sleep. Like rewatching this again, rewatching the director's cut made me remember like, yeah, this film is great, brilliant.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
Still can't ponder how good this film is.
Yeah,
still pondering how good this film is.
I mean, what do you want to explain a little bit? Like, give a synopsis of Doctor Sleep.
Yeah, sure. So, Doctor Sleep pretty much takes place not immediately, but pretty soon after the original Shining film. So you have Danny, the kid with his mom, and they're still trying to like overcome the trauma and the the stress that they had when they were at the hotel in The Shining. But the thing is, like with Danny, like he still is being followed by those spirits he saw at the hotel, and the man he met at the hotel who told him about The Shining, like his gift, The Shining, starts to kind of manifest and kind of mentor him like through his life, and as he's trying to kind of understand and overcome how to like counteract and how to resolve like his particular trauma. And he kind of does an okay job at first, like Dan, but then like as like the time goes forward and it skips forward, like we can see that he becomes like an alcoholic, and he has trouble sleeping, that sort of thing. But that's just like the very first.
Yeah, there's so many parts
Actually,
to this.
Yeah, this film, now I think about it, that's barely the first 30 minutes.
That's only like one story arc too. There's also like the major plot, which is, has to do with this group of, people who have the Shining, called the Twisted Knot? Is that what they're called?
The True Knot.
The True Knot.
Mm-hmm.
And the True Knot is like a group of people who have the Shining who eat other people who have the Shining. They eat their souls, essentially. And they're kind of trying to, their little coven of, people are kind of dying. And so they're trying to find essentially children, because children are more tasty or whatever. And they
have the best shine.
They have the best shine. And so they try to find children, and they eat children, basically, which is kind of gross. And disgusting. And that also leads to one of the best, scenes in horror ever, which is like the scene of them torturing a child. And I don't want to say it's the best scene, but it's very, very well acted. And as you're watching it on the screen, you're just like, oh my God, is this really happening right now? The kid who does who is getting eaten is the kid from Room. The movie with Brie Larson. Yeah.
And also the kid from Before I Wake.
Yeah. And so just a great child actor. Amazing child actor. And then another kid gets wrapped up into it too.
Abra.
Yeah, that's right. Abra is a young girl who has the Shining, and she kind of gets wrapped up into all this too, because her shine is particularly strong, and so she's able to sense that a child is dying. She's able to sense that, like Danny, and she's able to sense the True Knot, and so she kind of gets wrapped into all this too. And Dan essentially goes through so much like character development through all of these things, and kind of leads to the climax of his own character story and character development. Yeah. Just
like like Dan was such a great character. I forgot Ewan McGregor was playing him.
Ewan McGregor is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So good in this role. Yeah.
Like I don't even think about the actor who played him, because that's how good the character is, because you're so like immersed into the film, and I'm like, oh man, I forgot this is Ewan McGregor. He's really good at this.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And also I think for people who are hesitant to like watch this because it's horror, besides the scene that we named earlier with the kid getting tortured, basically, the film's actually not that scary. And this is one of the films that converted my my best friend into like horror films. Like he essentially did not like horror films at all, and I had gotten a pre-screening tickets to go see Dr. Sleep, and I was going to go by myself. He didn't want me to go by myself, so he came with me. And he ended up loving Dr. Sleep. And he doesn't do horror. Like, does not do horror. And so definitely give this one a try. It's a little slow, though.
It's pretty slow. Not as slow as the Shining film, but it's pretty slow. And, like, to watch this film, you don't really need to know the Shining, but it's nice to know because they make a lot of like homages to it.
Yeah, a lot of nods.
I guess another thing I want to add to Dr. Sleep is it didn't go down the route of like a lot of what superhero films would do in terms of like, oh, they're going to train and get stronger, come back. Oh, they're going to gather a bunch of other shine people and fight back, Avengers style. Like they didn't do that. They didn't do any of that. So what they did is they took the more realistic approach to like how would they be able to fight the true knot, because that's how like deadly they are. Like, and so they find different ways to do it, and it's not just like your stereotypical action flick or whatever, in terms of how they're gonna fight back. And so that's what I really, really liked about this film too. Yeah. So
yeah, I do kind of wish there was room to like explore the different members of the True Knot, because there's a handful of them, and they each kind of seem to have their own respective role or specific role in the group. Because they also seem very selective. Yeah.
Yeah, at that point, like, Mike Flanagan should just made this to a Netflix series.
It should have been a limited series on Netflix.
Yeah, because the director's cut is 3 hours long. 3 hours, and every minute is worth it.
Yeah, and it's split into chapters. Like, the director's cut has title screens on it, and so you can tell when one chapter is ending and when another one is beginning. So,
yeah, watching this film just didn't feel like 3 hours went by. Because that's how like immersed you can become into it. So
yeah.
Okay, cool. And now for our
main attraction,
of what we're talking about, The Haunting of Bly Manor. And Jonathan, you want to kind of give a thing for it?
Oh man, it's hard to give a
okay.
I can do it.
Okay, yeah,
I can do it. I think I can do it.
Okay.
So The Haunting of Bly Manor is about this young woman named Danny. She's an American woman who's come to London, and she's essentially looking for a job. She finds this ad about being like a live-in nanny for these 2 kids, and she applies for the job. First doesn't get it, but then gets it. And when she gets to the manor, she meets everybody, and the kids are really weird, like really, really weird. But it makes sense because they also just recently lost their parents. And so like that is kind of maybe a reason why she's like, oh, like they're a little weird, but they just lost their parents. So maybe this is why they're weird. As she kind of gets to know the people at the manor, gets to know the kids, and gets to know the manor itself, like she starts to learn a lot of things. And she's also is continuously haunted by something that she had left behind when she had left America. That's all I can really say without giving out too many spoils, but we're going to go into detail, I'm sure. That was kind of like the non-spoiler, like, this is what's happening. Here's like what really happens. And so as she goes on to discover, there was a previous live-in nanny. Her name is Rebecca, or Miss Jessel. That first nanny fell in love with someone who used to work at the manor too, Peter. He had plans to basically run away with Miss Jessel. But then Peter, he dies by a ghost in the house, and his soul kind of gets stuck in the manor. As the time goes on, Peter learns how to essentially like possess people. And he essentially tries to get Miss Jessel to come with him, and he possesses Miss Jessel and then kind of forces her to kill herself, which is, I think, one of the most... I like cried when that happened. Like it was just one of the saddest.
Very tragic.
Like, and it makes Peter seem like a bad guy, which like you can argue that he is, but man, like when this was happening, I couldn't like bring myself to say that Peter was evil, Right. I felt like he was just trying to do what he could to save their relationship, Anyway, we'll go more into that a little bit later.
But see, like that's one story arc.
Yeah, that's
just one story arc.
But that's kind of like it kind of has to do with the entire story, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so
like, I just kind of want to interrupt a little bit.
Go for it.
There's just so many like characters like in this particular series. Like you thought Hill House had a lot of characters and a lot of depth. Like Bly Manor has the same, if not more, characters with the exact same amount of depth.
Yeah.
and probably even deeper.
Yeah, depth, not depth.
Depth. Yeah, depth. More depth, not depth for sure. Kind of like Hill House, kind of like how each family member gets their own episode. In Bly, we're gonna make a lot of comparisons because they're essentially kind of like successors.
Yeah, it's like season 1, season 2, so it's fair, I think. Yeah.
And so Hell House had an episode dedicated to each member, but Bly Manor pretty much has an episode dedicated to each person on the property, like who works there. And so, as you know, we have Danny or Danielle, who's the main girl. We have the two children, Miles, the son, and Flora, the daughter. And then we have is she like the caretaker?
She's the housekeeper.
Hannah? The housekeeper, Hannah. She pretty much cleans the house, basically. We have Owen, who's the chef. And we have Jamie, who's the gardener. We have Henry. Henry is their uncle, the kid's uncle.
Yeah.
And pretty much the lord of the manor, I think, who pretty much owns that estate.
The guardian.
Peter, who we just talked about, he's like the chauffeur. And then Rebecca was the previous live-in nanny. And then we can go a little more detailed, but there's like 3 other more characters, but we're not going to mention them because these are essentially the main nine characters. Yeah, and they have so much like complexity to them, and like each of their actions are kind of like, I wouldn't say weird, but it's a little strange at first, like the way they carry themselves. But then as like each episode starts playing out, you start to kind of see like, wow, there's like, they're not just acting the way they are just because of that, but then they're being affected by something here, either by their past or by whatever's going on in Bly Manor.
Yeah,
we could talk for hours on each character. But why don't we talk about the scary stuff in Bly Manor?
I can continue and finish off the story, I guess, because I kind of went off a little trail with Peter and Rebecca.
Okay.
So the ghost who kills Peter is this woman who comes from the lake. And if you basically get in her way, she grabs you by the neck and she chokes you until you die.
Yeah, and drags you into the lake, basically.
Drags you into the lake. And so at the very end, Danny discovers how to essentially extends an invitation to the Lady of the Lake to enter into her. And when she does that, all of the spirits who are trapped in Bly Manor are released. And then it goes into the epilogue that kind of explains how Danny and the rest of the crew at Bly Manor continue on in their lives. And I won't spoil it beyond that. Yeah.
Wow. This show was just so good. I think personally it was the ending that really made it for me.
Like the very, very end.
The very, very end.
Yeah.
I think the ending
Do you want to talk actually
made
like about the very, very, very beginning and how the story is being told?
So in the very beginning, we kind of just skipped over this, but in the beginning, they're at a wedding. They start sharing like
ghost stories,
basically ghost stories. And then one of the ladies, the older ladies there, says, "Oh yeah, I have a story I can share." And then she kind of tells the story of the Haunting of Bly Manor. So we're being shown this, but like there's like a narrator kind of explaining what's going on.
Yeah.
In the Haunting of Bly Manor.
Yeah.
So that's how the film opens.
She only pops in every now and then. She doesn't really explain every single thing, but once in a while she comes back. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll kind of hear her fill in some small details here and there. Yeah, that's pretty much how the show opens, and then it comes back around again near the end.
At the very end, yeah.
To wrap everything up. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I actually really like this beginning because it's kind of this idea of like, hey, we're going to sit around and tell ghost stories, you know? Which actually I think is a very, very... It used to be a very, very popular thing in England to like gather around the fire and tell ghost stories. And I'm so sad that tradition is kind of lost now, you know? Because you have stories like A Christmas Carol, you know, and Bly Manor and The Woman in Black, and you know, stories like these, like they're the ones that get told around campfires, like to your family and friends, you know, not campfires, like fireplaces, you know, like in living rooms and stuff like that when there's a family gathering. And I'm sad that tradition has kind of gotten lost. It feels very British, you know. Yeah. What
do you think of the cast?
Okay, so I thought the cast was phenomenal, all except for Flora. I felt like as the TV show went on, I started to understand why they cast Flora the way they did. But I still think she's really annoying. And Bly Manor is based off of a novel called The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. And there was another adaptation that came out earlier this year called The Turning, which is freaking terrible. And I felt like Flora in that one was really well casted.
I agree. Yeah.
But then the Flora in this one is so weird to me. Like, I don't know. What did you think about Flora? And the casting
I thought she was fine. I wouldn't say she was phenomenal or,
Yeah.
amazing, but she did the job well done. She did great. She was fine.
I felt like compared to the rest of the cast, though, And
compared to the rest of the cast,
even comparing her to Miles,
right?
Miles, the actor for Miles is so good.
Oh yeah, he's great.
He's
but
amazing.
Miles had a spotlight though. In the second episode, we get to see kind of like how he got back home, and that kind of gave him a moment to shine. But with Flora, we don't get her arc until way later into the series when we're already exposed to everyone else's story arcs. So that would make Flora the last story arc to kind of see, but it's sort of like, man, like, there's a reason why her story arc is later, because it would be like a major spoiler if it was revealed earlier.
Right.
But I think it's because we've already seen everyone else's character arcs like flourish and become like full moonflowers, like Flora's.
Yeah.
Inside joke, moonflowers. But Flora's starting to grow the moment we see it, and by that point, like, we're already kind of in a way checked out because we're so invested to kind of see where the story's going to go from there.
Yeah.
I think that's the why it doesn't seem like Flora, I guess, shines as well compared to everyone else. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And I know why they cast her the way she did. She's supposed... Okay, the reason why I don't like her casting is because she seems a lot older. Like, you look at her character, you look at the actress playing Flora, and you're like, oh, she looks old. But the things that come out of her mouth, the way that she says it, it's like she's a child. It's like she's like 5 years old, It's
right.
She says really, really weird things. She talks really like she's like really sweet, things like that. And that's not what you do as like she's supposed to be what, 9 or 8?
8. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think 8-year-olds do that. And so I understand that's part of the story, right? Like,
right.
Is like she had she essentially got stunted because of what happened to her parents. And what's happening at the house and stuff like that. And so I get it. But then at the same time, I don't know. I just, I didn't like it, Yeah. I think that's...
Okay.
But then overall, the cast, I really like that it was a very diverse cast. There's people of color, and they're not just tokenized,
Right.
So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Now, let's talk about the scary stuff. Like, Hill House had some really, really scary moments. Bly Manor is more like creepy than actually scary.
Right.
That's what I think, because of the way it kind of builds up certain things. Like, the first thing is like, okay, I don't know if you guys remember this from last year, but like, I told you guys I don't do dolls and I don't do mannequins. And this freaking show has that. I'm like, hell no. And then Flora in the first episode, Flora goes and shows her dollhouse to Danny, and she has all her little figures. I'm like looking at it. I'm like, no. I can't.
I'm good.
I can't do dolls. Okay, I'm done.
I'm good.
I can't do dolls. And then you see a doll like, under a dresser, and Danny says, "Oh, what's that?" Like, you got to pick up your dolls, because they're all over the place. And she's like, Flora's like, "No, don't touch that one. Don't touch that one.
Put it back."
Like, oh, put it back. And then there's a part where Danny kicks that doll over. I'm like, hell no! What'd you
accident.
do, Danny?
It's on accident.
Yeah, on accident. I was like, Danny, what'd you do? You're screwed. You don't ever touch that stuff. Oh man, it was just. It's funny now that I think about it, but like when I was like in the moment watching, I'm like, nope. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me.
Oh man.
And it kind of carries the tradition of Haunting of Hill House. Hill House has a lot of like ghosts in the background you can see as characters talk.
Yeah.
They're just kind of there. And in Bly Manor, the same thing happens too. There's several ghosts that appear in the background while you're watching the show. So it's kind of like a Where's Waldo kind of thing that goes on. And there's actually... Like, I've only managed to find, like, 1 or 2 ghosts, and Jonathan's found a few, too. But, like, I think they're more difficult to see this time around. I think they hit them pretty well.
Yeah, but I feel like there's a lot more of them this time around.
Mm-hmm. They're more easier to distinguish compared to the ones you see in Hill House. They explain very well, like, what all the ghosts are and where they are in Bly Manor. So they do a pretty good job with that. And I guess one of the iconic figures in Bly Manor is in the very opening itself. All the ghost faces are faded. Like, you can't see their face. It's just like, you don't see like the eyes or nose or anything. It's just like a blank face. And that's a very significant point as the story carries through. Like, it's not just there for like a creepy scare factor, but there's actually a reason for it too. Yeah. And they do that very well. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I want to start talking about like the theme of like memory. And grief
scary
and
stuff.
Whatnot.
Yeah, I would just want to say real quick that Danny has this sort of traumatic experience happen to her, and she's being haunted by this sort of ghost of her past. And every single time that ghost came up, I couldn't help but laugh because he has shiny glasses and it's a shadow, and so that reminded me so much of the anime meme of like the guy with the shiny glasses, right? The evil.
Okay.
Yeah. And so like I didn't think it was very like scary. I actually thought it was really funny.
Really?
Yeah, because I kept connecting that to like the dark shadow evil shiny glasses, you know, like anime trope. And so I didn't think it was very funny. Like that kind of ruined it a little bit for me on the scare factor. I kind of wish somebody who like was really familiar with anime was like involved with that, you know, so they could be like, let's not make the glasses as shiny, or you know, like let's give a little bit more detail to his shadow, you know, because it literally just looks like a shadow with shiny glasses. And for those of you who don't know, it's very typical in an anime to have a character like an evil villain like that. But
it's weird. I didn't make that connection at all.
Oh really?
Like that, the first thing it reminded me of Ink.
Oh yeah, kind of.
Yeah, it reminded me of Ink. So that unnerving factor, you don't know what's kind of going on.
Yeah.
Like it's a little mysterious. Like that's what I connected it with.
Yeah.
So it reminded me of anime at all. I don't know how you got anime.
I think it's because, you know, I've been kind of involved in these communities that are very like, you know, involved in anime too. So
okay, yeah.
That's just what I thought of.
I didn't make that connection at all. Yeah. So when I first saw it, I was like, oh, nope.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw it, I was like, it kind of seemed like he was going to say, like, omae wa mou shinderu. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to say something like that to her.
Great. I can't believe you thought it that way. That definitely ruined her entire story arc.
Exactly. Which is why I was
shake
like,
my head. I can't believe you. Why would you make that connection?
I don't know. It's not my fault, you know.
That's funny.
But he does look a lot like, you know, the evil anime trope. Anyway,
I guess, but
I will do a meme, you know, where where he literally comes and says, "Omae wa mou shinderu," you know. I will say,
and then just legit make all the highlights where he appears and put anime music in the background.
Exactly.
That's exactly what you're gonna.
That's what I'm gonna do. It's gonna get viral anyway. Yeah, but that's all I had to say about the scary stuff. I think I didn't think Bly Manor was that scary. Compared to Hill House. But then again, dolls are not my trigger. So
yeah, dolls are my trigger, and there's a few jump scares in there, but yeah, there aren't too many.
In episode 8, there's a pretty good jump scare.
Which one? I don't remember.
The very, very end.
Oh, when Peter picks up.
No.
Okay.
Episode 8 is the really, really long exposition, right? Or was that episode 7?
No, it was episode 8. The flashback, the huge flashback.
Yeah, the huge flashback. Yeah.
Okay.
At the end of the very, very huge flashback.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When the hands come out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That wasn't a huge jump scare for me.
I thought that was a big jump scare because it was so quiet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you know it's coming, you just don't know when it's coming.
Oh. But yeah, compared to Hill House, Bly Manor is not as
scary.
It's not as scary, so you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Oh, but another thing I want to bring up is like the themes that this story talks about.
Yeah.
Like Hill House talks about family and grief, right? But but Bly Manor focuses on memory and grief and how memories affect our experiences in the present and in the future. And the show does a very, very good job even portraying that. And all the characters have something they're going through that deal with memory. Would you say that's true, Jonathan?
Yeah, I would go even further and say that all the characters have a core memory that they keep returning to. In the TV show, they call it like hopping or jumping,
memory hopping,
or tucking in. And so all the characters have this particular memory that they keep hopping to, and they can't help but be gravitated towards that memory.
Yeah. So basically what happens is when the ghosts possess like certain characters, that character will kind of like be in a trance, right? They're not conscious because the ghost is in their body, but that particular character is remembering something or thinking of something that has made an impact in them on them in their life. Like Flora, for example, she'll flash back to when her mom was still alive. But the thing is, like, what's interesting is because they play on the fact of how memories work. Because in the memory, Flora goes and says, something's not right because I'm 8 years old now, but this happened when I was 5 years old. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of true. Like, that's how memories work. Sometimes when you remember stuff, you'll think of it as what you look like now and back then in that memory. Very similar to dreams, too. Dreams kind of do that, too. So I thought that was a very interesting play on how they use that idea and that concept of memory and kind of carry it forward through the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And so, and like I said, it's a very, very common and current theme throughout the story because it's not just Flora that gets affected by it, but all the ghosts, all the characters are kind of involved with it. Like, for example, Owen is the chef. His mother has dementia. So, and so she'll kind of forget a lot of things too. So Owen's mom will think like it's 1960 whatever, and will think that Owen is someone else, as if his mother is in that memory, right? And so it kind of plays on that factor to it. And a housekeeper, Hannah, she'll sometimes like forget certain moments or forget certain things. She'll kind of jump back and forth between like what's going on and what's not going on, as if she's kind of like in a daze in a way. And so like I said, every character plays on that. Jonathan, would you say like that's pretty true?
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah. And just a note about Owen, I guess. I think Owen is probably my favorite character throughout the whole series or show. And I'm really sad that he didn't get his own episode.
Now I think about it, he did need an own episode, didn't he?
Yeah,
he should have.
I felt like instead of the really long flashback exposition, they could have given Owen an episode.
I think they should have added one more episode because there's only 9 episodes. Add one more episode to give it to Owen. But I think Owen's arc is tied in with Hannah. I think that's why.
Yeah.
Kind of like how Jessel and Peter didn't really have their own arc, but their arcs were tied together.
Yeah.
Right? Would you say so? Like Peter, because we got more from Jessel's side compared to Peter. Peter didn't really have his own arc, but it was connected with Jessel. That's what I think.
Yeah.
So that's probably what they did to kind of shave time, which is kind of true because they made a significant impact on each other.
Yeah, for sure. I would say though that Hannah definitely got her own episode.
Yeah. Oh, Hannah's episode was so good.
Yeah.
It got me like off my seat and like staring like right into the TV. I'm like, damn, this is good. This is good. This is such a good show.
Oh man. I actually felt like Hannah's episode was good, but then I also felt like it was really trippy.
Yeah.
Like if you're not invested in it, I could see people giving up at Hannah's episode.
I
just
agree.
Because the pacing is a little off, and it's like reading a book out of order, essentially. Like when you get to Hannah's episode, you know, when you put down a book and then later you pick it up, but you forgot where you stopped. And so you kind of have an idea of where you stopped. And so you start reading again and you're like, wait a minute, I read this already. Like that's what happens in Hannah's episode.
Yes. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Like that, you're like, wait a minute. I saw this already. What's happening, you know? And so that's kind of what it feels like. But I think, you know, that's kind of what Flanagan was trying to get at, you know?
Right.
But it definitely, that episode is definitely really weird, and you have to really, really be invested by the time you get there, or else, you know, if you're not invested by then I could see a lot of people giving up.
Why don't we talk about the Lady of the Lake, like her backstory a little bit?
Yeah, Viola.
Like Viola, because I think her backstory is the core reason why we have this story.
Yeah,
Like the theme of what's kind of going on.
Yeah, comparatively to Hill House, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know why the house is doing what it does, right? We
Mm-hmm.
don't know
Right.
why the house is keeping souls. We don't know why people are getting stuck there. In Bly
Mm-hmm.
Manor, I felt like they had to this time explain,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah, they had to.
why this is happening in order so that the ending could be better, right? Because Hill House got criticized a lot for its ending. And so I think, they purposefully did a really long exposition of what happened and made the house why it is, in order so that the ending could be better.
Yeah, but essentially Viola, she was like the lady of that manor, along with her younger sister, and their father passed away, and so there's no one to kind of carry on through, unless they got married. So Viola ended up getting married, and she had a daughter, and things were going well for quite some time. But then Viola caught a sickness, not exactly the plague, but the lung or something. That's what they called it. So she had to stay isolated away from her husband and her daughter. So
Yeah, it's like getting the
um,
flu in COVID.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's just like it's just a coincidence that it just happened to come out around the time when we're going through something like this. So
Yeah.
it can seem very personal.
Yeah.
When her husband and her daughter go away on a trip, her younger sister kills her. Yeah, kills Viola because, in a way, her sister was tired of her living like that, but she also was a little envious of like what she had. And then when Viola wakes up, she's kind of like in this room, right? But she can't get out of the room. She's kind of just stuck there. So she's just kind of waiting for eternity in a sense. The sister and the husband get married, but then the thing is, the sister can't have kids really. And so they come across like financial issues and whatnot. And so the sister gets an idea to open the heirloom box that was passed on to the daughter. And when the sister opens that box, then then Viola comes out and kills the sister. And
Yeah.
basically Viola starts to kind of haunt that manor.
Right. Well, actually, Viola had told her husband, "I'm gonna put all these dresses and things away, and they're for my daughter." It's essentially like in
Yeah.
her will that like
Yeah.
her daughter is going to inherit all these really expensive things.
Right.
And so like Viola's sister was not supposed to touch that. It was not hers. And then because the sister dies, the husband's like, okay, I don't want that. I don't want that in my
Yeah.
life. He does a
Yeah.
really, really smart thing in horror films. And he throws that shit away. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he throws it into the lake. And so since Viola is trapped in the chest, she essentially gets trapped in the lake because the chest of things gets thrown in the lake. Yeah.
And so Viola is locked in like a time loop where she's trying to look for her daughter to pass on like everything that she has.
Yeah.
And that is very, very tragic.
Yeah.
Very, very tragic story.
Yeah.
And that would explain why the manor is the way it is, why it's being haunted by that, and then why it's like continuous, why it's never ending.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just amazing. I thought that was great how they did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it got me thinking. So this particular TV show, because it kind of just goes off and explains the idea that, a lot of people just do things without really realizing why they do it, why they do things because of either like a memory or a fragment or something is very reminiscent in them that they don't know why they do it, but it's just there. And that's kind of what Viola was doing. Even as time went on, she didn't remember what she was looking for or why she was there, but she still kept doing it, because it was so important to her, So it got me thinking, like me personally, what is it I'm currently doing? What is it something I keep doing that I can pinpoint, why do I do this,
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you know how I got into K-pop?
No, not really. Maybe it was a K-pop band that you started to really like.
Yes and no. It's a little weird. So after watching this show, it got me really thinking why I'm like really fanatic about K-pop stuff. So this might seem a little like out of context, but it'll wrap up in the end. Don't worry. So I listened to K-pop a little bit in college, but I really only got into it last year. So that means like I started following groups, watching videos, Korean dramas, and I started learning Korean like a complete 180 compared to when I was first exposed to it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like why the sudden change? You know, what's with this thing? So here's the thing that I kind of connected it to. In college, I was particularly fond of someone. Let's put it that way. And she was interested in Korean dramas, K-pop, Korean food, the Korean culture, like pretty much anything Korean, right? And so the thing is, I cut ties with her a few years ago. So in a way, I think my Korea boo fanaticism might be like a remnant of her. Or kind of like a memory. So it's not necessarily like when I indulge in Korean stuff, it's not that it reminds me of her. My Korean stuff doesn't remind me of her at all.
Yeah.
It's just like I still like K-pop, K-dramas as they are, you know. But like it kind of goes on to kind of make you think, you know, like even if you forget why or how things started, like a part of me still won't, you know. And in a way, that's kind of what Bly Manor is trying to tell us. Like our memories, our hopes, our desires, and even if we consciously forget them, dead or alive, we'll still kind of be drawn to them in some way or another. You know, and I think Viola was a pretty good example of that.
Yeah,
You know?
that's interesting. Similarly to your sort of story, and this has to do again with also this idea of tragedy and stuff, right? But do you know why I was so obsessed with the Jonas Brothers? For those of you who don't know, I was obsessed with Jonas Brothers, like obsessed. When I was kind of like at the end of high school and going into college, I literally lived and breathed the Jonas Brothers. This is kind of when they were at their peak. And you even came to one of the concerts, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, when we were down in Southern California, or we drove down to Southern California to see them. But yeah, do you know why I was so obsessed with Jonas Brothers?
I thought it had to do with like their. Okay, to be honest, no. I don't.
It's actually because Grandma passed away.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
when Grandma had passed away, I blamed myself so much for her dying, because Grandma and I shared a room, right? We the very room that you're in.
Yes, that's true.
She didn't pass in that room though. She passed in the hospital. But anyway.
Yeah.
So nothing to be afraid of, Larry. But I shared that room with Grandma, and I remember that night Mom was like, hey, make sure you watch Grandma and take care of her, you know, because she was getting really sick. We didn't really know what was wrong and what was happening. So I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. In the middle of the night, my grandma wakes up to go to the bathroom, and I hear her knock something over as she's getting up out of bed. Like she knocks over like her lamp or something off of her dresser. And I wake up and I say, Grandma, are you okay? I say it in Hmong. And she's like, oh, I'm fine. Go back to bed. I'll be okay. And so that's what I did. You know, I was like a high schooler. So I was like, whatever. So I went back to bed. And then I wake up that morning to Mom wailing in the hallway because Grandma had passed out. The next thing I hear are like firefighters and ambulance EMT folks coming into the house and getting Grandma and taking her to the hospital. And Grandma had passed out, and she had had a stroke, and she was in a coma basically, and she never recovered from that coma, and she passed away. And so for the longest time, I blamed myself. I don't think I ever told anybody in the family, but like I blamed myself for so long that it was my fault. Like maybe if I had gotten up when she was going to the bathroom, I would have heard her fall. I would have called, you know, I would have called Mom. I would have called the cops or 911 earlier. Maybe they could have saved her. You know? And so for the longest time I blamed myself, and one of the ways that I would cope is Jonas Brothers. And they had a song in particular called 705 about like saying goodbye to somebody. And that song in particular was really, really helpful for me in coping with that sort of blame that I had for myself during that time. And that's why I became so totally obsessed with Jonas Brothers. It was kind of like a coping mechanism that I had for the loss of Grandma. But yeah, you know, in that same way, like I think all these characters have some sort of memory, you know, or some sort of thing that like happened to them that, that they're trying to cope with, or that they're trying to get over, especially Danny, the main character.
Yeah, definitely.
So Danny is running away from something that had happened in America, and she was engaged to her childhood best friend. During the time that she was getting up to the wedding, she had come to realize that huge spoiler alert here though, okay? So huge spoiler alert. So if you care, stop listening. But she had come to realize that she is a lesbian. She's LGBTQ, and she has these regrets about, or really, really cold feet getting into this marriage because, her partner is a man. And so essentially she breaks up with him and says, I can't do this. I can't get married. And then when that happens, they get into an argument, and her fiance or ex-fiance gets out of the car. And as soon as he gets out of the car, K-drama status, like a car comes and like hits him, hence the shiny glasses, because the headlights, reflected off of the glasses, and it kills him. And she's like basically traumatized, blaming herself for his death, and also like feeling this regret of like having first come out to somebody for the very, very first time, and then having to break up with somebody who she absolutely loves, but just can't bring herself to have attraction for, romantically and like sexually, physically. And so she's running away from that and basically not being able to like get away from the blame and guilt and shame that she carries with that experience. And as she, kind of goes through Bly, it's interesting because she grows a little bit from doing this, but at the same time was always within her, right? This strength, this bravery, this courage to overcome things. It's always been within her, but something at Bly awakens that thing within her, and she grows even more, to do that. So yeah, amazing character, so much deeper than the turning at the beginning of the year. That was terrible. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, so little fun fact: do you know why they go to Vermont, of all places? Do you know why Danny? Oh, so in the show, like, Danny ships with Jamie, and the thing is, like, when they first interacted, I kind of had that feeling. Like the second time they had their own scene, I had a feeling. I was like, oh, they shipping. Like they shipping.
I felt that too.
It clicked. I'm like, oh, they shipping.
I totally
it's
felt
gonna happen.
I think it's just really good chemistry between the two actresses.
Great chemistry.
Great chemistry between the two of them. Yeah.
Yeah, but do you know why they go to Vermont? So they go to the U.S. but they go to Vermont of all places. Do you know why?
No.
Vermont is the first state to legalize civil unions.
Oh.
In July of 2000.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's why. Because I was trying to figure out why they go to Vermont of all places. Because there was a scene where it mentioned that they couldn't technically get together. I'm like, okay, yeah, and I knew that. I remember that it wasn't legal, and I was like, so why they go to Vermont of all places? I looked it up, like, oh.
You mean, is it marriage? Yeah. They legalized marriage, right? Because civil unions were a thing.
No, like civil unions.
Oh,
civil unions.
Interesting.
It was legalized in July of 2000. Only in Vermont. Vermont was the first state to do it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then other states started picking up their own version of it and started doing civil unions and whatnot. And so I thought that was really interesting. I was like, wow, they did their research. They didn't just because this show takes place in 1987 at first. But we see a lot of time skips, time jumps, time moves forward, time moves backwards, whichever way time goes. Time goes that way. And so they definitely did their research. So really props to the writers, because that sort of thing, it's so subtle. It's so subtle, but it makes such a huge difference, So yeah, I really like that they did that. So
yeah.
All right. Any closing thoughts? We went on for a while. I knew we were gonna talk a while for Bly Manor.
We're not even. Oh my god, there's so much that I wrote down that we haven't even talked about.
Oh really?
Yeah, so much.
Okay, all my notes are done. So if you want to talk more, go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, I was paying attention to the credits to see who was credited for the writing for Bly Manor, and I think for the first 5 or 6 episodes, it's all credited to Mike Flanagan. I understand there's a writing room, so I'm sure that there's other people working on the writing as well. But Mike Flanagan is the one who gets credited for the writing for the first, I think, 5 or 6 episodes. But I think 7, 8, 9, or even 6, 7, 8, 9 is credited to James Flanagan. And
I saw that.
James was the one who kind of finished off the story, which is interesting because a few years ago now, Hill House was criticized so much for the ending. So I think it might have been Mike just been like, you know what, you just finish it off and let's see where it goes. And I'm sure again, Mike Flanagan was in the writer's room for that. But I think it was really interesting. That's kind of the route that they took. And James Flanagan is actually also pretty involved in Hollywood cinema as well. And he's an actor, writer, I think creator, director as well. And he makes a cameo in the film. He is the older version of Miles at the very end. So I thought that was really interesting. Love stories in the show. Which one would you say is your favorite? Your favorite love story?
That is so tough because there's essentially like three.
Yeah, there's three big ones. Yeah, Rebecca and Peter, Danny and Jamie, and then Owen and Hannah.
Yeah, dude. Oh man, that's tough. Like they're all great on their own.
Yeah,
they're all great. I think if I really had to choose though, like they all belong in their own category, but they all do. Because I think Hannah. Oh man, never mind. Because I was gonna say Hannah and Owen is the most tragic, but Danny and Jamie's pretty damn tragic too. I was like, damn it.
But then so is Rebecca and Peter.
Yeah, exactly. They're all okay. They're all great. I cannot give an award to any of them because they're all great. Oh my god, they're all good. They're also good on their own, like in their own category. They're also good.
Yeah.
Like compared to Hill House, there actually wasn't too much narration or monologue as much.
Really? I felt like there was a lot.
I thought there wasn't. There was the only real monologues I can remember is Jamie's monologue about her parents. Is it
the Moonflower scene?
Yeah, it's the Moonflower one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only monologue I can really remember. Yeah. Because everyone else is maybe because they cut back and forth between the characters, it didn't seem as memorable. Because in Hill House, it was just like one character talking for 5 minutes the entire time. You're like super into it.
Right. I think they did that for production's sake. But I bet in the director's cut they don't cut.
Yeah.
They just go.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
But there were a handful of monologues, I thought. I mean, I felt like Peter's monologue in his memory was so powerful.
Oh yeah, that one was pretty good.
Oh my god, it was so good.
Yeah,
I saw it and I was
pretty
like,
good too.
Oliver Jackson Cohen, like so good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
he's great.
He like
great actor.
As Luke in Hill House, he doesn't get a chance to shine very much. But in Hill House, oh my god, like that scene.
You mean Bly Manor?
Sorry, yeah, Bly Manor. I'm getting it mixed up now.
Yeah.
Like the scene where Peter is talking to his mom in his memory is just so good. Like so good, I was like, damn, I can't believe this is happening, you know what I mean? It's so good. So good. But yeah, anyway, like
I guess you could argue the memories are their monologues.
Yeah.
Because they're conversing with themselves.
Right.
Hannah's is pretty good too when she talks to herself. When she's talking to Owen, but she's like talking to herself.
Right.
I thought that that was really good too.
Yeah.
But I can't give an award to anyone. They're all so good. Yeah.
They're all so good. They're all amazing. And I think, and everybody can kind of relate to one or the other. I really love kind of like the main quote. I would say the main quote for this entire series is, "It's you, it's me, it's us." Like that is the quote that like will make you remember Bly Manor, so simple but so beautiful and so powerful, and it's something that comes up again and again and again and again. It's a game that Peter plays with the kids to kind of get them to like accept the invitation for him to come into them, and when they say that, they're able to combine their souls essentially. And it's so good. Like, it's so simple, but so powerful and so beautiful. So I loved that so much. And that's the invitation that Danny gives to the Lady of the Lake at the very end. She says, "It's you, it's me, it's us." And the Lady of the Lake accepts her invitation. Kind of making you think that maybe Viola was like, lesbian to begin with, maybe. But maybe. It also doesn't necessarily like signify love or romantic attraction. It just signifies like trust and relationship between one person and another. Yeah.
Right, right.
There were some things that carried on from Hill House that, like, when characters would say it or something would happen, like, it triggered my memory. They talk about the Forever House, you know? They talk about, again, like Larry, you said, the memory idea. Like, memories are like rain that fall around us, you know? That kind of carries on. And Lady Wingrave trying to fix her marriage. She says at one point, she says, I can fix it. Ironically enough, she says it to Henry Thomas, who is, you know, the guy who was saying
plays
that
Hugh.
in Hill House. And so he was the one.
You know, we didn't even talk about Henry.
Yeah, I know, we didn't.
Of all the characters, okay, we're gonna go on forever if we start bringing Henry now. Oh my goodness!
That's what I said. Like, there's just so much, you know. Like,
we should have dedicated Bly Manor its own episode.
Oh man! So like Henry's character. Okay, two spine-chilling moments for me in the entire TV series. Henry's alter ego, like, chills up my spine like crazy. And then when Danny first sees Miss Jessel, like the ghost of Miss Jessel, like those two moments for some reason gave me so many. I was like shaking from the chills in my spine because of because of how scary it was. But for me, I don't know why, I just couldn't handle it. I really liked the approach to love because there's this idea of kind of like singleness too that doesn't get left behind, you know? Even though, you know, these people kind of have tragic endings to their love stories, like, they don't go and look for love again as a way to heal, you know, like from their trauma. Like, I love that so much, you know. A lot of times when people break up with someone, or when people, you know, like, they lose the person that they love, they feel that like going and finding someone else is going to like replace that, you know, or subconsciously they believe that that's going to happen, but that's not the way that this story looks at love. And so, you know, like, you could argue that Jamie is a rebound for Danny, but I don't think that she is.
No, I don't think so. No.
Yeah, and
I would never make that argument.
Right, and like when they fall in love with each other, it's not because it's like, oh, you make me whole, or you're my better half, or you're my other part. You know, it's just literally two people, like, who happen to find each other and who happen to be attracted to each other. Like, that's it, you know?
Right.
It's there's no, like, transcendental meaning to having this person and this person fall in love, right? Because we tend to believe that, you know, like, it's like fate who, like, you know, like, we want to believe that there's this idea of fate, like, that brings, you know, two people together. There's soulmates and all these things, you know? This love story is not typically interested in that, you know? Which I really, really appreciated.
Right.
Yeah. So I really love the approach to love in this TV show. I have a question for you.
Sure.
Why do you think Danny? And I'm not like all over the place, but why do you think Viola accepted Danny's invitation?
Because no one else would invite her. That's what I think.
Really?
Or that's what I think. Yeah. No one else has invited her all this time. That's why she took it.
Yeah. Do you feel like even her husband, Viola's
husband? Yeah, not even her husband did that. He was like, nope, don't want a part of that. You know?
Right,
like,
right.
Yeah, like, he didn't want to do anything with it. Because he never really loved her anyway.
Yeah.
In a way, he never really did.
Yeah, he kind of had a thing
which
for
is sad.
The sister first. Yeah.
Yeah. In a way, no one wanted Viola. People were just terrified of her.
They wanted her stuff.
And then when she was a ghost, they were just terrified of her, you know?
Yeah.
So no one really understood why. So that's why Danny was able to take the step forward and, you know, be courageous and brave in that. See, I would never do that. So, like, for Danny to do that, like, that's, like, huge props there.
You'd be like, it's not you, it's just me, goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'd never do that. So huge props to Danny. Like, jeez, man. Like, that's real good. Yeah.
Yeah. Her character's so brave because of it, though. And Victoria Pedretti. Oh my God, this woman can act. She does such a good job as Danny, and she did amazing as Nell in Hill House. You know, who knows what she's gonna do next? But yeah,
The third season of Haunting.
the third season of Haunting. Yeah,
Of Haunting whatever.
Yeah.
The Haunting of whatever. We'll see.
yeah. I want them to do a adaptation of The Grudge, but I don't think that's gonna happen. We'll see.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
But
I hope they don't
we'll
do
see.
another British one. To be honest, people are like, "Oh, they should do The Woman in Black." I'm like, listen, no. Let's not do two British things in one. Like let's not do two British things in a row, please.
Right, right.
Yeah, I really love the actor for Owen as well. And even though this is a quote period piece, I felt like they did a really good job. Owen didn't have an accent, or he had an English accent, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't have like a foreigner's accent or whatever.
Yeah, and like to be honest, like that makes the most perfect sense because there's a lot of like British Indians
Right. Right.
in like England.
Yeah.
So it's like that makes the most perfect sense.
Yeah. To make
So,
him have an Indian accent would be very insulting in my
that
opinion.
sounds like very American.
It is something that Americans would do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Flanagan is American, but still.
Yeah, but if it were to take place in America, he'd have an Indian accent, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Like that's how like xenophobic we can be sometimes,
Right. Right.
So it's like
it's terrible. It's like so
it's
terrible.
terrible. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah, so I really like that he had an English accent, which I so appreciated. I'm just like, thank you. Just because we're brown and we look different doesn't mean we have to have an accent, I think that's it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We covered a lot.
Yeah.
I knew this episode was gonna be a long one, so
I mean, we can
Yeah.
let's talk about the ending really quick, I guess. Like,
sure.
I thought it was so. People say it's depressing, which like I can see.
No,
why.
I could see it be depressing, but I'd say it's more like bittersweet.
Yeah, I would say so too. It's bittersweet and it's like it's very beautiful.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe that's just my twisted dark mind, like thinking of love and looking at love. But
Yeah.
I feel like people say that The Notebook, and I don't know if this is true anymore, but years ago now when The Notebook came out, people were saying, oh, that's like the greatest love story of all time. I've heard people say that like Snape and the love story of Snape and Lily Potter in Harry Potter is a really good love story. Some people think Twilight is an amazing love story, but listen, y'all don't know what a love story is until you watch Bly Manor. I feel like Bly Manor does such a good job with each of its love stories. It's carefully crafted, and it's this very tragic ending. But at the same time, like it's beautiful because of everything that they were able to have. And
Yeah, and oh no, I want to say
Yeah, yeah.
even at the end when the bride at the wedding goes to the storyteller and says, this isn't a ghost story, it's a love story. And then the storyteller responds, oh, it's the same thing. And I was like, oh, that's a very interesting way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it may be morbid, or depressing to look at it, but even at the very beginning, like someone is talking about love and marriage, and if your marriage doesn't end in divorce, your marriage ends in watching the other person you love die. And again, like I said, depressing, but at the same time, like bittersweet because of everything you get to go through with that other person, and the love that you get to experience. Like, yes, it's sad and tragic, but every love story sort of ends that way,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? I'm pretty much done.
No, that's it. I mean, it's great.
We can't recommend this show enough. And I'd like to say I'd recommend this film to people who aren't a fan of horror and want just a good story. But then if you're not really up for jump scares, especially the anime one, then like that freaked me out when we first saw the thing in the mirror. I'm like, nope, nope. You got something haunting you.
Yeah.
So yeah, watch the first episode. If you can't get past that, you're probably not going to survive the rest of the show.
Yeah. I feel like it's doable. It's doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not. You can look away for the scary parts. There aren't that many. I promise. There are not that many scary stuff compared to Hill House. Hill House was scary as hell. Okay, like Hill House was terrifying. Bly Manor is definitely light. There's no real horror stuff going on.
Yeah.
So we encourage you to watch Bly Manor. If everything we've talked about sounds really intriguing and interesting, we haven't even touched upon a lot of stuff. We touched upon like a good core of this story, but like there's so many other small details that we haven't talked about at all that add so much more and bring this story so much more to life. So we highly encourage you to check out Bly Manor if you haven't already. All right, so that's pretty much it for today's episode of the Outside Stories October Halloween special. Next week, we are talking about a favorite, I guess, franchise. I don't know if franchise is the right word, like property of mine. Lovecraft. We're talking about Lovecraft. So next week, we're talking about Color Out of Space, Underwater, and Lovecraft Country. And I've been hearing great things about that, so I cannot wait to talk about it. All right, we'll see you then.